it's very important.
The story that
Do you know who this girl is? This is Joanne Callan, and she's from Try the Alternative.
The story that I was saying was there was a guy and he was fishing off the west coast or wherever he might have been fishing, and along came an American tourist and he said to him, you know, would you not get
a bigger boat?
Would you not get a boat and you could go out and fish? And your man
Yeah.
says, well, yeah, and then what would I do? And he says, well, you could catch more fish and, you know, you could maybe sell them. And he
Well,
says,
we do it in Texas.
And kept getting bigger anyway. Then what would I do? And your man says, well, then you could buy a bigger boat and you could have more fish and maybe you could sell them on to other people. You could have a market. And he says, great. And then what would I do? And he says, well, then you'd have money and you could buy an even bigger boat. And you'd be able to go way out. Maybe you could have a couple of boats. And your man says, and then what would I do? And he says, well, then you could go on, you get bigger again, and you could maybe have a factory and you could process the fish, and you know.
So for God.
And he kept, so the answer back every time was, and then what would I do? And then what would I do? So eventually it got, and then you could have a whole, you know, branch of factories and everything would be great. And he says, and then what would I do? He says, then you could take money, you'd have money and you could take some time out to enjoy yourself.
Go fishing.
Go fishing.
From the shore.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Back to basics.
Isn't
so we
she
can
great?
go around this whole full circle and take ourselves back.
It's the story of our lives, isn't it?
Yeah.
In a way. I've just read it on air. There's a story coming in at the moment. It's a scientific, it's a survey that shows the necessity of and the success of education programs for children in the matter of sexual abuse. They've found that if children are put on a program to tell them about it and to encourage them to report it, that children at primary school age even are more likely to benefit and to blow the whistle.
Well,
it's a difficult one. How is that? Have you any knowledge of it occurring, and how is it dealt with at the moment?
I think there are. I mean, there are certain different campaigns, and I definitely wouldn't be the expert in it, but I am aware of a few campaigns, the underwear rule and a few different bits and pieces that kind of tick in and around that. And I think some schools are very proactive, encouraging children to talk. But I suppose the key thing of a focused campaign is maybe that children know what they're talking about. And the risk maybe that we have is that if children don't know what they're talking about, then their only education about a particular subject comes from the person who's abusing them. So it's, you know, I would agree that some form of education and kind of proper talk around it.
I was glad to see that. It was interesting. It's coming out of Australia, the research. It's a professor has sourced the information.
It is.
But,
you know,
and there's a story this morning as well. It's still going on. A man has been jailed for abusing two great nephews. We're a troubled old world, aren't we?
It is, I mean, it's horrendous, and I suppose the thing that we have at the minute now is maybe that it's been talked about. There's a side of me that does believe we do need a different approach. You know, there's a lot of legislation there in terms of people working with children need to have police checks and stuff like that, which is obviously very, very important. But I'm not sure that it actually gets to the people that it needs to get to. You know, it is somebody who's going to abuse a child going to go out and publicly work with children. You know, I think it's a
more
very,
secretive world.
In one sense, and then I suppose there are cases where it has been someone who has very obviously. I think the onus really relies on adults and adults being aware around the adults around children. And
it's kind of, if I had children again, and God knows I had enough of them, if I had children again, I would want to actually educate them, myself and my partner, together, talking to the children.
Yeah, I think
in a kind of controlled home
situation. I think whatever topic we're talking about, it's good to talk, and we need to talk about it to children, because the reality is now that on any topic, if children want to know anything about anything, they only have to Google. And you know, it is. I mean, you do it. You know, I do it myself. Somebody asks a question, and you think, "Oh, Google will have the answer to that." So where we need to be careful is what we need to realise is that children are doing that as well. So in times gone by, when a child had a question about anything, well, there was a couple of sources of information. There was maybe an encyclopedia. There was parents. There was a dictionary. And And that was relatively controlled in terms of, you know, I mean, even if we're talking about, you know, that teenage curiosity around sex or whatever, you know, like we all remember the time in school checking it up in the dictionary, what does it mean, and you know, that sort of stuff. And that was very innocent, because you get one line description. Okay. The fear is that now children aren't going to dictionaries, and to type those same, as we would have seen, you know, those 3 letters into a computer, well, your response is an awful lot different. And that's the same on so many different levels, that if they want to know answers, if they're curious about anything, which children have a natural curious mind, but the curiosity is to be encouraged. The concern is what source of information. I watched a programme one night about a guy who was covering a programme on just children on the internet and what they were having access to. And, you know, he was typing in words, simple words, that he was thinking, you know, he was sort of saying, yeah, well, you know, young children are going to hear those words. They might not know what they mean, but they're going to hear them. And he was texting them in, and within 3 or 4 clicks, he was into all sorts of sorted,
you know, when we started this conversation, I said it's a troubled world.
Yeah.
And you know, it's always been thus, I suppose, but less obvious and whatever. What kind of week has it been for Try the Alternative?
Well, I suppose maybe a bit like everybody else. The weather was fabulous last week, so I had a lovely holiday and then came home to some lovely weather. So it was great.
Where did you go on your holiday?
I was in Italy. So
what sort of food did you eat?
Oh, lots of, not a lot of
spaghetti,
pasta.
Spaghetti, carbonara.
No, not a whole lot. Had some pizza and bits of pasta and stuff. But lots of salads and all very good stuff. It was lovely.
Yeah.
Really
so you're back to work again?
Back, and it's been a busy week. And lots going on, and back to schools with relaxed kids and stuff. So, lots happening there.
The relaxed kids end of things, are more and more people buying into it, and
seems to be.
Are you chilling out the classrooms of the nation?
Well, I suppose there's only me. So no, there's not only me. I'm now the coach for Ireland. So I've just trained.
Hear the easy way she says that.
16.
I'm now the coach for Ireland. Wow, well done. Congratulations.
Thank
You're
you.
Great.
I've trained 16 new coaches in the last 2 months, so there's a team, I suppose, stretching out and growing. But yes, just yesterday I was in a school and I had a primary 1 boy who 4 or 5, and he said, "That was so peaceful. Can you read that again for me?"
Wow! From a 4 or 5. That was so peaceful.
4 or 5. It was so peaceful. Can you read that again for me? So, I'm so passionate about that work that we really need to give children the skills, emotionally and physically, to cope with the world. You know, the world, as you said, it is a challenging place. It doesn't have, you know, we can be in challenging situations. They don't have to challenge us. Is probably the thing. Well, obviously, in certain situations, that's difficult. But in the broader when we're talking about a broad snapshot of stuff, we can be in very challenging situations in life, maybe stress at work or things like that. But that can happen. But it's how we, you know, difficult situations aren't always the problem. It's how we are able to cope with them.
And I had an experience yesterday which taught me a lot. I'm out of the BBC now about 22, 23 years, and I was at a funeral of a dear colleague from the BBC, and all my friends and colleagues at the BBC were there. Everyone was there. And really, to a man and a woman, they were such beautiful people. You know, the door of camaraderie and bonhomie was open again. And I suddenly realized I worked with these people through the worst of the troubles. And I didn't appreciate, all my memory of the time is the memory of stress, the memory of getting it done, meeting the deadline, making sure we did the story right and impartially. But I suddenly stood outside St. Patrick's Chapel in Banbridge yesterday, greeting all my friends and realizing I had the privilege of working with the most fabulous people in the world. Lovely, decent, good human beings. Yeah. And I was too stupid to twig that at the time. That was because I was allowing stress and whatever to dominate me.
Yeah. And that's, you know, a bit like if you talk about, you know, the guy who's sitting fishing and then suddenly all this carries on to let him get back to fishing. you know, I think sometimes we need to look at what is important.
Absolutely. One of the things I used to when I was running Radio Current Affairs, and I recommend this to anyone out there in any sort of, you would understand what I'm going to tell you. I used to have an annual first of all, I had a Friday club in the office. And the Friday club, in those days, the BBC would wheel down a trolley, full of sandwiches and wine in those days. So we'd had a rough, tough week. The middle programme of the week was Newsbreak at 1 o'clock. When we got Newsbreak out of the way, the trolley came in and we started to shoot the breeze and analyse the week before at 2:30, 3 o'clock, starting to do PM Ulster at 5. And that was a great management technique, and it worked. And I also, once a year, I would take the folk down to Carlingford, and it would be a full-dress weekend. We would go for dinner to Harry Jordan's, we would stay over, and the next morning we would climb Slieve Foy. And men and women who, at the foot of the mountain, were enemies, by the time they got to the summit, were friends. And I remember one lad, I looked at him, and now he's gone up the mountain, and his coat's flying behind him, and out of the corner, out of his pocket, there he was with his a bottle of whiskey. And those were wonderful days. But I didn't have the wisdom to twig it. I suppose I'm saying, really, and this is part of your wisdom, that we take the time to realise that the sun is shining and that we should grab it.
Or that it's raining, or, you know, that there's a mix of that there are stuff going on, and every so often, and probably it's a case of practicing what I preach, but I would do what I walk, obviously, sometimes, well, not a lot, but not as much as I should, but I would walk fairly regular enough for exercise, which is a different type of walk. You know, you're moving, you're out, yes, and you're out, and you're maybe, and I do like to exercise outdoors, but I would try at least maybe once a month, or maybe more often if I can, to do a mindfulness walk. And to do the same walk that I do, because I have a route or whatever that I walk, but to do it mindfully. So to set myself the goal of noticing something that I haven't noticed before.
The explanation of mindful walking, tell the people about that. You're coming close to it.
Yeah, I suppose it's being mindful of what's going on around you. I don't know about anybody else, but I know when I'm walking, I could be busier in my head when I'm walking than when I am than the steps that I'm taking, because you use the time maybe for planning or analysing, and you know, we can sometimes maybe out for a walk's the only time that somebody might have to themselves, and as I say, maybe I'm different than most or similar to others, who knows, but that time can be a very busy time in your head, because you're walking and you're thinking, right, what do I need to do, or you're maybe thinking back over a conversation that you've had, or you're engaged with your brain all the time, and very disengaged from what's going on around you. And mindfulness, or mindful walking, or just a walk, being aware of what's going on, it depends what title you want to put on it, for me is walking and being aware of what is around me. So the feel of my feet on the ground, the smells, the sights, the sounds, whatever's going on around.
Talking about smells, one of the great smells linger.
Yes.
One of the great memories of my school days, I didn't much like school, but I always loved the time of sports day in school, because they'd cut the grass on the morning of sports day. And as soon as you came through the door, you could smell it, the cut grass. And as you went down into the pitch at the Abbey, there it was, this beautiful curtain of wafting fresh grass aroma coming to you.
It's a very unique
smell.
God.
Isn't it wonderful the way these things linger with you, though?
Smell and memory are very, very closely related, and in terms of the part of the brain that controls both. And if someone wants to stimulate memory or social connection, it's smell that needs to happen. So particularly beneficial maybe for people that are suffering with dementia or Alzheimer's, and also for children with any form of development delay in terms of speech or social interaction, stimulating their smell, and that can lead on then to a lot of children with autism, and that would have a very limited choice of food that they would eat.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is that possibly their sense of smell has been affected, possibly by their birth. There's different reasons for it, but the sense of smell has been affected, and we all know how difficult it is to eat food, or it can change sometimes, but that feeling when you've got the cold and everything tastes the same. You know, that one, and if you can't smell properly, that's the side effect, that all of your food will taste the same. So there's no reason to have a real interest in food, but smell can be very well stimulated, which I'm not going away from the mindfulness, I'll come back to that in a second. But interestingly, for anybody that is interested in child brain development, there's a fantastic seminar coming up on the 23rd of April in the Canal Court. It's from an American organisation called the Family Hope Centre, and the tickets are available on Eventbrite. So we 2 weeks ago had one of my guests on was chatting about the seminar and about the benefits that it has brought to her wee boy with autism. So I would definitely, any form of development delay, it doesn't just have to be autism, or anybody working with children. I went to the same seminar a few years ago in Dublin, and amazing information on how the brain works, what we can do to make it work better, and to help hopefully help heal the brain.
I've been fascinated recently because I'm living for a time before my departure to Spain with a daughter, and I'm interfacing with 2 of my great grandchildren, 2 little girls.
Wow.
The oldest is 3, the youngest is 2. But honest to goodness, these people, I had forgotten the level of communication skills that children have.
It's amazing.
They talk and they come up with concepts and they will correct you, and then I'm just in awe of it. I'm glad I'm having to go back over it all again, I can tell you.
It's amazing how it goes. But I suppose back to the mindfulness, so my walk will always pick up something that I try to set myself the goal of noticing something that I haven't noticed before. And on one particular occasion a couple of weeks ago, the sense that I decided I was going to focus on was listening. So I wanted to hear something that I hadn't heard before on this particular walk.
On the walk.
And as I was walking, I noticed this, I could hear this noise, and I was thinking, God, that's very loud. And it all happened in a quite split second. But it was actually, I was walking past a field of cows, and it was the cows eating the grass.
That's
which
fantastic.
You could hear so loud. And chomping. And I mean, it was really almost deafeningly loud in a sense. And yet I was thinking, you know, I've walked past these cows doing the same thing so many times, and I've never noticed it. Not because they haven't been making the noise, but because I haven't been listening. And, you know, I think when we look at that in life sometimes too, maybe, you know, we're hearing people, but we're not possibly listening to them. And
did you ever try talking about cows? If you go to a fence and there's a field full of cows, and you look over the fence, and they're paying no attention to you whatsoever, and you go, and you do that half a dozen times. Before you can do it 10 times, the entire herd of cows is at the fence looking at you. It is true, that's what they do.
I'll take your word for it.
No, it is true. But
I'm not sure the roads of South Armagh are ready for me yet, standing at the side of them, making all sorts of weird cow noises. But I suppose it's the resonance of
is,
and
they're curious creatures. How we come to eat them, I can never figure out. And I always apologise to them when I meet them, when they're on their feet, and say, look, I will be eating you, and I'm terribly sorry this is going to happen. But you don't eat meat, do you?
Not a lot. I do eat beef. I don't eat a lot of meat, but I do eat some.
I got a nice ribeye steak 2 nights ago, and I only ate half of it, but I cooked the whole lot, and I kept the half, and I cut it into slivers, and then I had some green pepper and some onion, and the slivers, and I stir-fried, but pre-cooking the vegetable end of it, and then had some black bean sauce on a bed of basmati rice. It was very jolly. It was very nice, I tell you. Right, is that it? What more have you to... What is on your programme today?
Today I have Martin Rafferty, and...
There's a name.
Martin is a counsellor, and he deals with addictions and stuff, so we'll be covering that at 3 p.m. today.
What sort of addictions does he deal with?
Drug and alcohol addictions.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
But a conversation that's good to be had and
Necessary.
Yeah, necessary. So
Okay.
that's
Thank you
3
very
p.m.
much.
today. You're welcome.
3
Thank you.
p.m. Destination Well-Being. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're a good person.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.